So have a seat for just a few moments, okay? Now you might be only a mere 25, but God put you in this room today, and He put me in this room today, and if you haven't figured out by now that I'm going to be talking about Jesus as shepherd, you know, you haven't been paying attention, but you're going to get a slightly different sermon than they got last night, and this has to do with the conversation I just had with a gentleman who I think was a member of Chip's Parish. As a matter of fact, I know for a fact he's a member of Chip's Parish. And our conversation is going to touch a little bit on a different direction. But I want to take you through those prayers that I said in the very beginning. And if you have your little leaflet, look at the collect of the day, all right? Would you? I want you to pay attention to what I'm saying. The prayer went like this. O God, whose Son Jesus is the good shepherd of your people, grant that when we hear his voice, we may know him who calls us each by name and follow where he leads. Hear his voice, know him who calls us by name, and follow where he leads. Those three things. If you were wandering the hills of Palestine, you wouldn't see many farms because the farmland there really is terrible. And that's why there's so much poverty in that land, even to this day. But there were a lot of sheep. And what you learn about sheep, you probably have read in history books in school, you've heard it in sermons. The average sheep, not bright. Okay? Sheep, by definition, do not listen. They wander off on their own. They get into trouble. They can be helpless, and they're usually defiant. Now, have I described the average American teenager? Of course I have. Have I described us at the same age as they are now? Of course I have. The sheepfold wasn't much protection. You couldn't put them into an area that was penned because, and this is the God's honest truth, they are too stupid to walk through a door. So you have to find another way to get them into a place where they're safe. And what you do is you corral them into an area where the wall kind of comes together. And then the shepherd literally will be the gate at night. And the shepherd lies down in front of them. They won't go because they follow him. They'll only go as far as the shepherd. Unlike American, here in this country, where the shepherd has the dog corral them and then they go in front of the shepherd. In the Palestine, the shepherd was first and the sheep followed. They listened to his voice. And I've seen things, I've never been live to see it, but I've seen things on those National Geographic channels and whatnot. You get a whole bunch of sheep from 3 or 4 different shepherds, and they all go into the same corral at night. And in the morning, the 4 shepherds go to 4 different areas, and they just call the sheep, and the sheep respond to the voice that they know, and they follow that voice. So Jesus taps into this image. They're not bright. They need help. But ultimately, what the shepherd is saying is that nobody gets to hurt them. And if they're going to hurt the sheep, it's going to literally be over my dead body. Because they're going to have to go over that body to get to them. But being shepherd also means taking responsibility. It's not just being good, it's being faithful. It's being real. It says, when danger comes, I will be there for you. And what Jesus is saying in his own kind of humorless way, which I could say in a kind of a more snarky way, is that the hired person looks at the sheep, looks at the wolf, and says, look, I hope you guys make it. Or if you don't, I hope you make good lamb chops. But in either way, I'm out of here. And the image Jesus gives is not the homey, holy card, soupy Jesus picture. It's the one that says, you listen to my voice, and I will keep you safe, but you've got to follow me where I lead you. And that's why I said those 3 things in the beginning. May we hear his voice, know him that he calls us by name, and follow him. Follow him where he leads you. And he leads us, after listening to his word and listening to his sacrament and being his community, in many, many places, in places we don't expect. And this leads me to the conversation I had this morning. A gentleman who came in here who's a member of another church, and it's the first time he got to see his pastor since he found out that Chip has cancer. He wasn't quite prepared for what he saw. He wasn't prepared for the tremendous amount of weight loss and the hair loss and how weak and sick. And he came here as a person, he didn't use these words, but I will speak for him, angry with God. Why would God do this to this man? And my answer is, why not? Do you understand what I'm saying? The Lord takes us in life and brings us, and if we follow his voice, he brings us in paths of which we're not in control. We think we have our life so summed up. And Jesus is saying, you've got to listen to my voice and let me lead you where you need to be, not necessarily where you want to be. If you're going to read the little Thursday reflection that I'm going to do this particular Thursday, here's a spoiler alert. I grabbed it from one of the many blogs that I read during the course of the week, and it just bowled me over. And I'll just give you a little bit of an insight, because once again, it's the same point. It's a story of a much older priest, and he's writing this thing, and he says, I had my life so planned out when I walked out of seminary. I knew exactly what I was going to do. I knew exactly what kind of community I was going to serve in. I knew exactly where God wanted me to be, and his life has been nothing of what he thought. But his life has been where God wanted him to be. And this struck me hard because I was this guy. Those of you who sit in front of me, has your marriage relationship been exactly what you thought it was going to be? Has your job been exactly what you thought it was going to be? Raising your children, has it been the experience you thought it was going to be? Do we plan out and have control of any part of our life when you think about it? What we do as believers is we believe that if we listen to his voice and we follow him, we're going to be where we're supposed to be, even if we don't plan it out. Jesus, being the good shepherd, says, look, follow me and be good at what you are called to do. You are somebody's child. You may be somebody's parent or somebody's grandparent. You are, depending upon your type of work, an employer or an employee. You are a student or a teacher. Whatever you are doing, be good at it, be faithful at it, and know this is where God is calling you to be. And do it well. And realize you're not going to control the outcome. You don't know where God is going to take you 2 days from now, or 2 years from now, or 2 minutes from now. Listen to the voice of the Good Shepherd. It means looking out for others, looking to care for others, freely and willingly try to bring others to Christ. Don't be the one who's afraid to pay the cost of discipleship, and don't be afraid to love as he loved us, willingly. How many of you remember the author Flannery O'Connor? Read any of her books? Okay. She was an author in the 20th century, and a lot of her books have religious subtones to it. Well, she has a great line that comes out of one of her characters, but she also spoke about this as well. She died years ago. And she said, people don't realize the cost of faith. People want their faith to be, and this is her words, a big electric blanket. But that's not what faith is. Faith is the cross. Faith is the journey. Faith is following his voice, being a sheep of his fold. So I challenge you this morning, you who are lucky enough to hear this sermon, faithful 25 of you, to hear, no, you were meant to be here. So hear his voice. Know that he calls you by name. From the moment you were baptized, he knows you and calls you by name. And follow wherever he will lead you. Amen.
Amen.